You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 17th of March 2014. Nottingham chubby Asian man arrested after performing indecent act on train in front of teenage girl. Depraved passenger jailed for sex act in front of schoolgirl on Bolton bus. Belt-waving Nepalese sentenced for street brawls in Aldershot. Maths teachers from China to be flown to Britain for fall terms. Northumbria's Operation Sanctuary latest report, 2 new charges. UKIP councillor receives suspended prison sentence for arson offence. BNP bodyguard arrested on Merseyside after woman claims she was the victim of homophobic abuse. Rising crime rates force German-Polish border checks to start again. EU citizenship for sale to non-Europeans in Bulgaria for as little as £150,000. Borno, 123 killed as Boko Haram launches another attack on Giwa barracks. Muslim Fulani herdsmen kill 100 in attacks on Nigerian villages. Whilst US and EU dither, Crimean Parliament formally applies to join Russia. Thought for the day, multicoloured rainbows. And finally, our forefathers' happy days. First, I have to wish all the sons of Eire or Erin a very happy St Patrick's Day without going into proto-Celtic or modern Irish names, and hope that the Yanks are still doing all the St Pat's Day marches and frippery today. Boasting of a bit of the O'Brien blood myself, I'm wearing my pixie hat. Celebrating this day is taking the Irish back to a time when they were united, sort of, and it was truly the Emerald Isle, before the Brits and the EU and of course immigration. Uncivilised, but happy days. UK news. Nottingham chubby Asian man arrested after performing indecent act on train in front of teenage girl. A Nottingham man has been arrested after he was alleged to have performed an indecent act in front of a teenage girl on a train after boarding it at Boston Station. British Transport Police (BTP) said the incident was reported to have taken place between 6:05 p.m. and 6:20 p.m. on Thursday, March the 6th, on board a train travelling between Skegness and Nottingham. A 17-year-old girl from Heckington was travelling on the train when the 55-year-old man boarded at Boston. Police Constable Andy James from BTP said he sat on a table across from her, then proceeded to perform an indecent act while staring at her. The girl alighted the train at Heckington and raised the alarm. Officers met the train at Nottingham and the man was arrested. The man, from Nottingham, has been described as chubby and Asian. He wore a black jacket and grey jogging bottoms and had a red rucksack with him with a number of daffodils sticking out the top. He's been released on police bail pending further inquiries. World at 8. Yet another mad Muslim to be looked after and paid for because of cultural differences. Masturbating in public. What are these men on? Depraved passenger jailed for sex act in front of schoolgirl on Boston bus. A 47-year-old man has been jailed for a depraved and corrupt act in which he performed a sex act on a bus in front of a schoolgirl. Clement Kumar was jailed for 27 months after he was caught in the act on a number 36 bus in Bolton on December 31st, 2012. Kumar was found guilty on Thursday at Bolton Crown Court of engaging in sexual activity in the presence of a child. Despite his claims the man in the CCTV was not him. He fabricated a story that he was working in an office computer at the time and claimed he was a victim of mistaken identity. Kumar was caught after an anonymous caller identified him from an appeal in the Bolton News. As well as jailing him, Judge Peter Davis made Kumar the subject of a sexual prevention order for 10 years, saying that this and his previous convictions for 2 offences of indecent assaults against women in 1996 make him a serious risk of harm. World at 8, oh no, not another. Chop it off and send him home. Belt-waving Nepalese sentenced for street brawls in Aldershot. A group of men of Nepalese descent appeared in court following 2 fights in Aldershot which they claim was caused by racist insults. Brawls erupted on the streets of Aldershot during 2 separate incidents in the early hours of November the 10th last year when a group of men of Nepalese descent reacted with violence to claims of racial abuse. During the fighting, which took place in Victoria Road, some of the group removed their belts and began whipping them against the ground and shop shutters. Residents called the police after witnessing the incidents, in which a man suffered a broken hand, and 5 members of the group appeared at Aldershot Magistrates Court on March the 6th to face charges of using threatening or abusive words or behaviour with intent to cause people to believe unlawful violence might be used against them. Buwang Gurung, 23, brothers Hermant Gurung, 24, and Suman Gurung, 25, Cham Paija, 25, and Salish Rai, 19, all pleaded guilty, with Rai and Hermant Gurung admitting a second count relating to another fight with 2 other men. James Burnham, prosecuting, said the violence began at around midnight. Chairman of the bench, Paul Bryson, said the defendants had isolated their victims and used group action. He ordered Buwang Gurung, Hermant Gurung and Suman Gurung to complete 60 hours of unpaid work, and Paija and Rai to complete 70 hours. They must all pay £85 cost and a £60 victim surcharge. Maths teachers from China to be flown to Britain for September term. Maths teachers are to be flown in from China to help arrest declining standards in Britain. 60 English-speaking teachers from Shanghai will be placed in schools from September to promote methods such as rigorous daily maths lessons and homework, ministers were to announce on Wednesday. The move, brokered by Education Minister Liz Truss, followed a fact-finding trip to China, is the latest in a series of initiatives aimed at reversing a slide in maths standards. World at 8. Great! We dumb down the teacher training here and take anyone and everyone on and open what are laughingly referred to as our children to odd teaching practices, and then have to import teachers who have been trained to be much stricter and work-orientated to take over. What is the matter with us? Are all our government officials and teaching practices so diversity-orientated? You won't find the Chinese so multicultural ethnicised. Northumbria's Operation Sanctuary latest report, 2 new charges. According to the BBC, nearly 60 people have been arrested as part of an investigation by Northumbria Police into claims of sexual crimes against vulnerable women and girls. Officers said they had identified 80 potential victims through Operation Sanctuary. Police are trying to contact them and identify witnesses. So far, 57 men and 2 women have been arrested and 6 have been charged with various sexual offences, including grooming a girl under 16 and rape. The Sunderland Echo reports that Gurun Sayan, 44, of Plunkett Terrace, Chester Street, was charged with assault by penetration and will be tried in August, while a Newcastle man was charged with raping a child. The Chronicle Live reports that Moses, a Nigerian man, was remanded in custody at Newcastle Magistrates Court and will face Crown Court trial. He pleaded not guilty, meeting a female under the age of 16 following sexual grooming and non-penetrative sexual activity with a girl under the age of 16. He will appear at Newcastle Crown Court on March 28th. World at 8. This will never end till we start deporting foreign criminals and their families. UKIP councillor receives suspended prison sentence for arson offence. Rushmore Borough Councillor Malcolm Small has been sentenced to 12 weeks in prison, suspended for 2 years. UKIP councillor Malcolm Small has received a suspended prison sentence for an arson offence committed last month, putting his future at Rushmore Borough Council in doubt. Small, who represents West Heath, set fire to several items of clothing belonging to his wife, Kim Van Opdorp, after a row over a social engagement at his home in Brewers Close, Farnborough, on February the 4th. At Basingstoke Magistrates Court on Friday, he was sentenced to 12 weeks in prison, suspended for 2 years. Kate Price, prosecuting, told the court the offence was triggered by an argument between Small, 48, and his wife of more than 10 years on February the 4th over who they would be inviting to the Mayor's ball on Valentine's Day as their guests. Miss Van Opdorp left the house and returned to find Small had taken what she estimated as £2,000 worth of clothes from her wardrobe, including the dress she was planning to wear to the ball and his own tuxedo, and put them on a pallet in the back garden. Ruth Cassidy, defending, said Small had seen red after the argument and regretted his actions. She said Small had taken only a handful of cheap clothes, was careful not to let the fire spread, and had tied it up afterwards. Under the Local Government Act, a councillor is automatically disqualified from their position if they receive a custodial sentence of more than 3 months. While Councillor Small's sentence does not exceed this limit, Conservative Council leader Peter Moyle has already called for him to resign. The court heard that Small had discussed his future with Rushmore Chief Executive Andrew Lloyd and had been assured he could remain as a councillor if the 3 months prison sentence was not exceeded. Small declined to comment after his sentencing. BNP bodyguard arrested on Merseyside after woman claims she was victim of homophobic abuse. As reported by the left-wing Liverpool Echo, merely repeated by the World at 8. The bodyguard of British National Party leader Nick Griffin was arrested in St Helens. Skinhead Martin Reynolds, 46, was led away by officers outside a fundraising event for the far-right party in Forrester Avenue, Thatto Heath, at about 6 p.m. last night, Saturday. The police were called after a woman said she'd been subjected to homophobic abuse from a man who got out of his car outside the venue where the fundraiser was being held. When the police arrived on the scene, they arrested Mr Reynolds and took him to College Street Police Station for questioning. Photographs on the BNP's Facebook page showed Mr Reynolds being led away in handcuffs while Mr Griffin looked on. A spokesperson for the party said the arrest was politically motivated and that a reason for it had not been provided to them. They said Mr Reynolds had been released without charge this morning, but Merseyside police have not yet confirmed this. Video posted online showing party supporters confronting police and accusing them of unfairly targeting Mr Reynolds during the arrest. In a statement, Merseyside police told the Echo their attendance was in response to a routine call from a member of the public. They said patrols attended and, as a result of inquiries made at the scene, a 46-year-old man from Leeds area was arrested on suspicion of a homophobically aggravated public order offence. The man has been taken to a police station on Merseyside where he will be questioned by officers. An investigation into the full circumstances surrounding the incident is continuing. He was released on Sunday morning on police bail pending further inquiries. They said anyone with more information could call police on 101. Now, World at 8 version. Police harassment and it won't stop there. Martin is shaven-headed and not a skinhead, but the sad thing is that anyone not a nationalist can report a minor misdemeanour, or even an imaginary one, to the plod and they will come out hell or high water to a racist or homophobic crime. Bloody sad. European news. Rising crime rates force German-Polish border checks to start again. Police in an eastern German state will reintroduce border controls between Poland and Germany due to rising crime rates 7 years after checks at crossings were scrapped. EU citizenship for sale to non-Europeans in Bulgaria for as little as £150,000. Non-Europeans can buy European Union citizenship, entitling them to live and work in Britain for as little as £150,000 under a scheme operating in Bulgaria, an investigation by The Telegraph has disclosed. Undercover reporters posing as representatives of an Indian businessman were told that a Bulgarian passport could be legally obtained without the need to live or work in Bulgaria. So long as the applicants can deposit sufficient funds, they need only to visit the East European country for 2 days to obtain all the rights of EU citizens. World news. Borno, 123 killed as Boko Haram launches another attack on Giwa barracks. Barely 24 hours after Islamic sect Boko Haram launched an attack on Giwa barracks in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, to free some of their members detained in the barracks, the second set of attackers stormed the barracks Saturday morning. However, the military intercepted them, killing hundreds, while others who fled are being pursued by soldiers. A security source who spoke to the Daily Post said the sect members succeeded in breaking the cell where their members were detained during the attack on Friday, but the military overwhelmed them, killing all that were freed and those that went to free them. Muslim Fulani herdsmen kill 100 in attacks on Nigerian villages. Gunmen killed more than 100 people in an attack on 3 villages in central Nigeria, an area where long-standing disputes over land, religion and ethnicity often erupt into violence, 2 local government officials said on Sunday. Police confirmed the raids by Fulani herdsmen late on Friday on the villages of Agwa Sankwai, Agwa Ngata and Shenshi in Kaduna State, but declined to give a death toll. Hundreds have been killed in the past year in clashes pitting the cattle-herding and largely Muslim Fulani people against mostly Christian settled communities like the Berom in Nigeria's volatile Middle Belt, where it's mostly Christian South and Muslim North meet. The unrest is not linked to the insurgency in the northeast by Boko Haram, an al-Qaeda-linked group which wants to impose Sharia law in northern Nigeria. However, analysts say there is a risk that insurgents will try to stoke general Nigeria's conflict. Though most of the Islamic sect's attacks are contained further north, but it did claim a 2011 Christmas Day bomb attack at a church in Jos. World at 8. Ah well, anything Muslims do is okay for the UN, innit? The UN should be sued for crimes against Christian communities throughout the world. Whilst US and EU dither, Crimean Parliament formally applies to join Russia. Following Sunday's controversial referendum, which Crimean officials say overwhelmingly backed leaving Ukraine, Crimea's parliament has formally declared independence from Ukraine and asked to join the Russian Federation. The government in Kiev has said it will not recognise the results. The US and EU say the vote was illegal and have vowed to impose sanctions on Moscow. The crisis follows the ousting of Ukraine's pro-Moscow President Viktor Yanukovych on the 22nd of February, following months of street protests and deadly clashes. The region will adopt the Russian currency, the ruble, and will move to Moscow time 2 hours ahead by the end of March. Speaking in Brussels, EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton said the so-called referendum was illegal under the constitution of Ukraine and under international law. She said the EU can't simply sit back and say this situation can be allowed to happen, but that ministers need to think carefully about what their response should be. The White House has described Russia's actions in Crimea as dangerous and destabilising and said the international community would not recognise the results of a poll administered under threats of violence. US President Barack Obama has warned Moscow that Washington is also ready to impose costs over its actions in Ukraine. Thought for the day: multicoloured rainbows. Now, on reading the item about the Nepalese running riot earlier, I am reminded of an incident which occurred a few weeks ago in an area of Hampshire that is virtually inundated by Nepalese immigrants. Now, so as not to get into trouble with our veterans persona, Pete Malloy, I'm making the distinction that although most, if not all, Nepalese people who come over here are attached to, one would hope, a Gurkha or two, my report does not concern the rights or wrongs of allowing them to come over clan by clan. This is a true report garnered from a dear friend who lives in this area and uses the public transport when not walking. She refuses to drive a car. She was sitting on a local bus going to the shopping centre. Next to her was another lady, white, a complete stranger. Behind her were 2 elderly Nepalese women wearing their national costumes as usual. Whether there were any other Nepalese on the bus, I don't know. In fact, even the driver may have been. I didn't ask. Suffice to say, my friend and her fellow passenger got talking, and during that talk there was a funny smell and liquid running down the centre of the bus. The other lady turned to my friend and said, and I quote, "Oh dear, not again." It transpires it's common knowledge on these buses that the elderly Nepalese women still adhere to their cultural norm of pissing in public, on public transport if caught short. They don't wear any form of undergarments and apparently just slide forward off the seat and let loose and then sit back. My friend's pal said it had happened too often, but she still has to use the bus regularly. My friend, who I must admit nearly popped her clogs at the way in which this disgusting practice is apparently accepted by the local transport people and travellers, nearly fainted away at the terrible smell and the fact that urine was still flowing copiously down the centre reservation of the bus. There was no expression on the faces behind her at all. Apart from the fact of celebrating cultural differences, the fact that human urine is getting on people's shoes and children can slip and fall in it surely should be a health and safety concern for council inspectors. This was not a one-off. It happens all the time in that locale, and the men are as bad, only they piss in public in the gutter, and so do their young children. Whether we like it or not, whether we celebrate la différence or revel in the diversity or the multicultural dream, this is not acceptable behaviour in a fairly civilised country, where pissing in public has been banned for the indigenous persona for many years, and it is a finable offence. So why aren't these Nepalese women taken off the bus and charged and fined? What gives them the God-given right to make our public transport a latrine and get away with it because maybe, or probably maybe not, one of their distant relations is aligned to the army or was in the year dot? It makes me angry when I hear of ethnics committing foul crimes or acting in a foul manner and not being held accountable because of the sheer laziness of the local police or the fact that in many cases, especially on those local buses, the drivers are Nepalese as well. So soon we shall have buses laden with smelly pissing people and animals stacked on the top a la Nepal. No one has the right to act in a foreign country in a way not conducive to that country. It's simply bad manners. And foul though the Europeans may have been in many cases, most do not fall into that category. Making an African cook a roast beef dinner in soaring temperatures is not pissing on his mode of transport, is it? When abroad, try to act like a local. That is the mantra. And it should be the mantra for all immigrants coming over here. Learn English, wear Western clothes, eat Western food. Don't masturbate in public in front of young girls. Don't rape young girls, vulnerable or not. Don't cause riots, get a sodding job, and don't piss on the buses. Moreover, happier I would be if the lot of them went home and carried out their cultural norms in the valleys of Kathmandu with their quasi-communist government to keep an eye on them. Chairman Mao said, "Do not piss on buses." There, got that off my chest. But my pal is still suffering from the awful smell of second-hand curry or something rather foul. It quite put her off her shopping, that did. And finally, why our great-grandparents were so much happier than we are. Have you ever wondered why our great-grandparents had such fond memories of their youth? Well, I'm surprised they remembered anything at all. Forget Tums and Telenol, forget Aleve and Benadryl. Look at the cool stuff they had back then. A bottle of Bayer's heroin. Between 1890 and 1910, heroin was sold as a non-addictive substitute for morphine. It was also used to treat children suffering with a strong cough. Cocoa wine, anyone? Metcalfe's cocoa wine was one of the huge variety of wines with cocaine on the market. Everybody used to say it would make you happy and it would also work as a medicinal treatment. Mariani wine. Mariani wine 1875 was the most famous cocoa wine of its time. Pope Leo XIII used to carry one bottle with him all the time. He awarded Angelo Mariani, the producer, with the Vatican gold medal. Maltine, produced by the Maltine Manufacturing Company of New York. It was suggested that you should take a full glass with or after every meal. Children should only take half a glass. A paperweight, even a paperweight, promoting C.F. Boehringer and Sohn, Mannheim, Germany. They were proud of being the biggest producers of the world's products containing quinine and cocaine. Opium for asthma. At 40% alcohol plus 3 grams of opium per tablet, it didn't cure you, but you didn't care. Cocaine tablets 1900. All stage actors, singers, teachers and preachers had to have them for a maximum performance. Great to smooth the voice. Cocaine drops for toothache. Very popular for children in 1885. Not only did they relieve the pain, they made the children very happy. Opium for newborns. 46% alcohol and 1 grain per ounce of opium. I'm sure this would make them sleep well. It's no wonder they were called the good old days. This presenter remembers Dr. Collis Brown's tincture, sold up to the late 60s, full of opium, and I had it for terrible morning sickness for my first 2 pregnancies. I still felt sick but didn't care. They stopped selling it in the early 70s. What a shame. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.